to try to leave the door open for those that come in late.
As you saw, a couple of the young men, the older men, looked like they were in their 20s. One was 22 and the other looked about the same age, named people. Yes. One name that they used, which you could probably find several in every American city's phone book, is James Stewart. The other, I think, was named Hill. And does that go on all the time, where they will come to the center and they have a name and they try to use that to get to their father?
Many, but not most, have names. They've heard a name, or they have a part of a name, like James. Often they don't have the family name. And so they do, many of them think they're going to go to the United States and find their fathers. They have kind of a residual hope that that will happen. When I have talked to them, I tried to disabuse them of that idea early on, because it's not going to happen for the vast majority of them. So I try to give them a more realistic view of what they can expect. But many do hope somehow in the United States to be able to find their families. Of course, those that have no address and no name, I mean, that will be almost totally impossible.
Do these Americans have a legal obligation to these children?
The fathers?
Yes.
The unidentified fathers.
Unidentified fathers.
Legal obligation, no. In terms, if they would establish paternity, and then they would have a legal obligation if they were minors. But it's difficult to establish any legal obligation. There's the great moral obligation, I think.
How many in Europe? How many American soldiers that were involved in Vietnam have lived up to their moral obligation? Do you have any idea?
Oh, very few. Again, it's difficult because many of them do not know where their children are. Some do not know if there are children. So it's and as the gentleman was saying, many, those few that do find out or are identified by their children in Vietnam, often don't want to get involved at this point. Some would like to provide assistance without having it known where it's coming from. It's a difficult, so many years after people have their own families. But, so there are very few, very few that do that.
Have you ever seen a statistic on how many American soldiers or servicemen married Vietnamese women?
No, I haven't seen statistics on actual marriages. No, there were not that many at the time. Most of them, the children came from liaisons that were not legal marriages.
We talked in the tape about how do you determine whether you're an Amerasian, and appearance was brought up. Is that the only thing you go on? That's
the basic criterion. In the Amerasian's interest, often the family will come in, they have nothing else.
No paper.
They've often, if they're very poor and they've lived from hand to mouth, they have no papers. Sometimes they will try to provide papers that are not true. So the best evidence is the appearance of the person and the age. And that's what we try to do. If they have very good old documents, once in a while you see an old birth certificate with the name of the American father. Very, very rare. Then there's no question whatever. But appearance is the main criterion. And that's sometimes, especially at the latter part of the program now, it's becoming a little difficult to try to determine, because the genetic mix can be from one end of the spectrum to the other. You have someone looking totally black or white American to someone looking totally Vietnamese. And so it becomes difficult and a heavy burden for the consular officers and the INS officer to make a decision if it is indeed an Amerasian.
What would you say, and this is a total hypothesis, to someone sitting out there watching this saying, America has not done enough, we should have been more responsible? I have no idea whether there's anybody saying that, but what would you say to them if you were...
Well, I would say we in the field in Vietnam have the easy part of the job, relatively speaking, interviewing them, deciding if they're Amerasians, and sending them on to the United States. The big problem they face is when they arrive in the United States. It's not often what they thought. They're caught between two worlds. They're often illiterate. It's a very, very difficult situation for them when they arrive here. Very few have had a smooth passage. So if people are upset about what has happened in the past, they can deal with the present and try to make a contribution to helping the Amerasians who might come to their local areas. Or they can contact voluntary agencies and ask that they come so they can help them.
Where's your hometown originally?
Philadelphia.
Why'd you get into this business?
Initially, when I was with the Agency for International Development, I I wanted to be involved in foreign affairs. When I was in Vietnam, I married my wife in Hue. We got married in Hue. She's Vietnamese. And in the latter part of the 80s, after 75, many of her family members began coming out by sea. Most of them arrived safely. So well, the time I was with AID, I was involved in meeting my family literally sometimes on the beaches in Southeast Asia. And I got a great deal of satisfaction out of that. And I saw a huge need, and I wanted to get into that kind of refugee consular work. That's why I resigned from AID and decided to go into the State Department. And when I joined the State Department, I had to go somewhere else first other than Southeast Asia, so I went to Paris and Nairobi to get a regional diversity of experience. And then I got back to what I really wanted to do in the beginning, and working with the refugees in the orderly departure program, especially out of Vietnam.
What year did you meet your wife? What year did you marry her? And do you have any children?
We met in 1973 in Hue. It was Tet, February 73. We were married in June of 73. I was very sure when it happened. We have 3 children, a boy 18, a boy 13, and a girl 8.
Are they a mixture of Vietnamese and Caucasian?
My 2 boys are, yes, and our daughter is from Thailand.
And how do they do? How do they do in this society?
They do very well. They've grown up, I've been overseas for about 20 years. They've grown up in international schools with people that have been mixed. They've had a very diverse background and diverse experience. And I think, so they're, in essence, they're Americans, but they've had the feeling of being something else also, and have been able to adapt and mold that into their character. And they've done very well.
All of you speak fluent English and Vietnamese?
I'm afraid my wife and I do well, but my children do not speak Vietnamese, no, unfortunately.
Where did you go to school?
Undergraduate, Penn State, Columbia University for graduate school.
And studied what?
Political science undergraduate and international affairs for the master's degree.
Just little questions. This isn't little, but Agency for International Development is what, and it's not connected, you say, with the State Department?
Well, it's the Foreign Affairs, the Foreign Assistance Agency of the U.S. government that administers all our foreign assistance programs throughout the world. That's their objective, that's their task. The State Department handles the consular, political, economic relations with the countries all over the world, not related to the provision of economic assistance and such. And I'm involved in the consular part of the consular refugee tasks at the moment of the State Department.
The 2 women we talked to, one from the Human Rights Foundation and the other one from UNICEF at the United Nations, kept talking about the embargo and the importance of the embargo. What's the official State Department position on why we don't lift this embargo?
Well, over the years, we've made progress. The Vietnamese have now cooperated to a good degree in areas of our concern. Their troops have been removed from Cambodia. They've been forthcoming on the POW-MIA question. They've been forthcoming on the ODP program that has allowed
Orderly Departure
Program, sorry, which, just to interject, includes the former re-education people who have come out of camps, the Amerasians, and normal immigration family reunification cases. So they've been forthcoming, and we have a roadmap to normalization with Vietnam. Because of the cooperation date, we feel we can begin to make progress, and we are moving along the road to normalization, which will indeed involve lifting of the embargo.
When do you think it'll happen?
That depends. It's not easy to say. Parts of it have been lifted very recently for voluntary organizations, non-government organizations, for example, who want to go to Vietnam, and they can do that now as a matter of course. They don't need special licenses. And it has also been lifted for commercial dealings in humanitarian items, food, medicines, educational materials.
Like Michelle Jordak of the Human Rights Foundation was saying that Shearing Plow, the company, the pharmaceutical company, took pharmaceuticals over there and gave them to them. And that's something you're seeing more and more of?
That can happen now. Commercial deals in that area, right. That was very recent, just last month.
You can make telephone calls directly now?
Right. These are all steps along the road. And the degree to which we can perceive considerable and more progress on other areas, such as the POW MIA question, that will enable us to move quickly also toward normalization and toward the lifting of the embargo.
Thank you, William Fleming, Deputy Director, Office of Asian Refugee Assistance, Bureau for Refugee Programs, the U.S. Department of State here in Washington. The telephone number, 202-663-1031, and Mr. Fleming says he'll be in his office on Tuesday morning, the day after Memorial Day.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're watching Vietnam Revisited on C-SPAN. The Mekong Delta is located at the base of Vietnam. Made up of 9 provinces, the Mekong Delta is known for its fertile land, which produces enough rice to feed the South, Central, and some parts of North Vietnam. Vietnam Revisited continues in a few moments with a walking tour of Ta Obstetrics Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City. In addition, we'll talk with Dr. Arnold Schechter, a professor at the State University of New York at Binghamton, and a leading researcher on the effects of Agent Orange on the Vietnamese people. Joining Dr. Schechter will be Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, former Chief of Naval Operations and Commander of U.S. Naval Forces in Vietnam from 1968 to 1970. But first, more aerial views of the Mekong Delta.
Dr. Arnold Schechter, one of the things we did on our trip to Vietnam was visit a hospital in Ho Chi Minh City that well, I was going to say deals with the Agent Orange problem. You know better than I do what we were visiting. Tell us, what was that hospital all about?
You and also I were visiting the obstetrical and gynecological hospital in Saigon City in the Ho Chi Minh City province. And that hospital takes referral difficult cases as the Mayo Clinic would in this country or Mass General.